So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please. Jan, can you start?
Just say here?
Yeah.
Oh,
Or
we
say
do
your
that?
name,
Oh,
yeah.
All right. Janet.
Breck, second year in service.
Travis.
Doug Iverson, present.
Lisa Weeks.
Mary Madero.
That's right.
Have we got Al unmuted? We have Al on Zoom.
Al?
Al?
Remote.
Okay, great. And then our guests tonight,
Jerry Nelson, and president of the Friends of the Library.
Friends of the Library.
Also,
Debbie Konechny, I'm former chairman and currently still on the executive board of the Friends of the Library.
Do we have room for you to come up here? Do you want to come up to sit up
There's a
here?
chair, you can come right here.
Yeah,
yeah, we're down the hall.
just come on up.
Okay. Thank you.
Adam, you're okay?
I'm good.
So our first order of business is Amber is from the city's auditors, the outside auditors of the city. And she's gonna make a presentation to us to review some things. And some of this relates to the library board's relationship with the Friends of the Library, and as to whether or not the Friends are considered to be a component group of the Ripon Library and what that might entail. But Amber's gonna give us an overview of that situation. Take it away, Amber. Is she here?
Yeah, she's right there. Amber?
Mr. Iskey?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. My video is not working, I apologize, I'm in a school, so I think my reception is poor, so my video is not on, but what I want to talk about here, and I do have, I believe Riley Hutter is there in person, he's the manager on the city's engagement, and I've been working with the city a number of years, and there's been some things in the transition that I just want to talk about and maybe get in front and try to maybe correct some of it and make sure that we're all on the same page. So in part of the 2023 audit for the city, if you see a copy of that, you will see a prior period adjustment for funds that were at the community foundation but not recorded on the city's books or the library's books as of 12/31/2022. What we did is we then recorded those funds, and then as of 12/31/2022, and then we recorded the 2023 activity. What happens, and kind of, you might ask, well, why weren't those on the books? Well, there was some misconception, misunderstanding of whose funds those were. After going through a number of meetings with Desiree and the city, and some additional conversations back that Desiree and the city had back with the foundation, it was determined that the funds at the foundation were not tied to a separate EIN number from the city. They were in the city's name at the foundation. At that point then, we decided, and we, based on the standards, that needed to be recorded in the city's books because the library is a department of the city. Although statutorily, you are able to have separate accounts. So those were subject to audit, those were recorded. What did we do then after the 2023 audit? What we did is we worked with the city we worked with Mandy at the city and set up a worksheet that can be used, and Desiree, that can be used to record the monthly activity of the community foundation for the library's funds and be recorded each month. Because the big thing is that this activity gets on the books in a timely and complete fashion. Ideally, every month when the statements are available, the statements have the activities such as contributions, distributions, realized and unrealized gains and losses, investment income, and so forth, fees, all of that gets recorded on the books. So we take that and then we would make the adjustments. We have set up that template. We will continue to work with the city to make sure that that gets recorded every month. What then can happen is the library fund within the city, that report, the report that you can be provided, the library board and the city council or the administration can be provided a report that would show revenues and expenses year-to-date, budget and actual. And all of that would be up to date, including the community foundation funds, which historically have not been recorded every month until the end of the year, when it came time for an audit. Or prior to some transition at the city, it was a year-end journal entry that the city had done at that point, but still not every month where you're able to look at it from a whole picture perspective. So that's kind of where we started and how we got here in terms of the cash and what we need to correct going forward. The second piece to this is, so there's some relationships that the library has with the Friends of the Library and potentially the Ripon Library Association. Those need to be evaluated as potential component units. There are some checklists that I have provided the city and to the library that should be completed and then provided back to us with the documentation, meaning articles of incorporation or bylaws and so forth. But that's not the only piece that can make you a component unit. There could be reliance from one group to the other, from a financial standpoint or from a board involvement standpoint. But the checklist walks through all of those steps and comes to the conclusion accordingly. So my ask is that the Friends of the Library, the association, complete those checklists, give those back to us with, again, the supporting documentation, and then we can sit down and go through those checklists, make sure that if there's any questions about how to answer a question or so forth, that we can get on the same page with that. And then we can come back and present to the board what the conclusion was for those checklists.
Amber, can you?
Regardless of, oh, yep.
Can you step back a second and just explain what you mean by reliance?
So reliance, especially from a financial standpoint, could be where the friends or the association, and I say friends or association loosely because we have this situation or these relationships with police departments, fire departments, etc. So the friends or the association could have a reliance in that maybe they're purchasing items for the organization versus just doing collections of donations or fundraising, etc. Really what we want the association to do, or the friends, is collect those donations, do the fundraising, and then the library or the city actually expend the funds and the donation be turned back over to the library. That keeps it the cleanest. It also minimizes the potential for a component unit situation, obviously dependent upon that checklist. But once you start commingling those expenditures, you really kind of create that, a little bit more of that reliance and that intertwined activity.
What,
Does that help answer that?
Yes, Janet?
what did you say happens at the city after they've collected the money?
After the friends or the association has collected the money?
The friends, yep.
Okay, so once the friends and the association collect the money, they can hold the money until an expenditure takes place. So say the city then, I'm just gonna use books for an example. Say the library purchases, I'll use Doug's example, $20,000 worth of books. The friends might then would then write a check out to the library for the $20,000 to cover that expenditure, or whatever the donation is that they're giving. Maybe it's 5 or 10, whatever it may be. But they would cut, the Friends or the association would cut the check to the library, but the library would actually pay for the item or the expenditure.
Can you give the other side of that, the explanation of if the Friends or the Ripon Library Association made a direct purchase for the benefit of the library? And the difference there?
If they make a direct purchase, depending upon the dollar amount of direct purchases, you would have, again, that reliance situation. You may have the situation where a donated item could happen. But again, the frequency and the dollar amount would have to be considered to determine if that's a financial reliance on that organization. And that would be part of that potential component unit checklist. And that would be taken into account there.
So you didn't answer my question. In the first scenario, you said something happens at the city, and then when you answered it, you didn't mention that part. So you said,
So the city, in terms of the collection,
no, you
can you
said,
restate your question?
so you, in your first scenario, you said Friends collect money and then they give the money to the library, and the library buys something. And then you said something about the city in there, and that's the question I'm asking you. And when you answered it, you didn't mention the city in your answer. What happens at the
So
city?
I'm kind of using that city and the library
It's the same.
as interchangeable a little
Yeah.
bit, because the library is a department of the city.
City.
So the library is part of the city's financial statements. It's a department and a separate fund. It's a special revenue fund within the city. And there's activity, the activity is recorded at the city. So the library does not have a separate
Yes.
set of books.
Right.
The
Thank you.
library's books are maintained at the city.
Okay, that was answering my question.
Sure.
Thank you.
Recorded at the city.
Yes.
Perfect.
Debbie and Jerry, do you have some questions you'd like to ask?
I'm Jerry, I'm Friends of the Library President. You wanna go over that again, the chain? Friends of the Library collect the money, we give it to the library
As a donation.
as a donation. Then, what happens?
The library would go out and acquire, let's say you were making a donation to fund a certain program.
Yeah,
Yes.
You would make the donation to the library would deposit those monies, and then the library would turn around and make the expenditure, whether that was hiring
then the library would be the ones that are hiring the program.
yes.
Correct.
And now, Amber, that depends upon whether or not it's by answering the questionnaire, which isn't gonna happen today, as to determine if the Friends are a component group or not.
Even if they are not a component unit, it would be best practice for either organization. It would be best practice for that donation to be made by the association or the Friends to the library and the library expend. That would be best practice regardless, because you're not blending that reliance from an operational standpoint with those organizations, because that could be misleading to the users.
And when you say association.
Users being,
She means the Ripon Library Association.
What did you mean by users?
users are the users of the financial statements, so it could be your bank, it could be your bond council, it could be the city council, it could be you, the library board. It could be just a regular resident that requests financial information through an open records. It would be anybody who's looking at the financial records.
And you may have said this and I may have missed it. What are the ramifications if it is considered a reliance relationship?
So if it is a reliance relationship and determined to be a component unit, if then if it's a component unit, let me go through this path. If it's a component unit, it would have to be, technically, we would evaluate materiality, and it would be included in the city's audit as a component unit. If say the Friends or the association are not included, but they are a component unit, we would have to qualify the city's opinion because they're excluding a component unit, if it's material. There's a couple different situations that can happen. The Friends could have a separate audit done, or the association could have a separate audit done, if it's material, and it could be incorporated into the city's audit. There's multiple different situations depending upon the results of the checklist. If it just comes up as it's not a component unit, there's no structure behind the board and no reliance, etc., and it's not, then it's just really considering that best practice to not create a reliance where you're evaluating it on a consistent basis. So that would be the decision that would be made once that checklist is completed.
Okay, thank you.
So Amber, one of the tests is gonna be materiality.
Yep,
So that's, in layman's terms, that's the dollar value of what's happening between the two, between us and the Friends, or us and the association.
correct.
That determines whether or
Correct.
not it rises to the level of needing to be included.
Correct, it depends on that relationship, and it also depends on say the association or the Friends are a component unit, and they have a material balance of cash, hypothetically, from fundraising and donations, that could also, even though it hasn't been turned over yet, that could also trigger a material component unit. I use cash because it's the most common in each of those organizations type of what their operations are.
Additional questions? Jerry?
Our treasurer is not here, and I'm not a money person. This seems, I don't know, seems a bit unlike anything we've ever done before for Friends of the Library. We are, I know, you're talking about the checklist. I do have a checklist here. And and one of the things that ended up on the checklist that we figured out, our board has figured out, is yes, we are a CU that should be included in the financial reporting and should be presented discreetly, which I would assume could be that we would present what we've done. We could have, I have a list. On a different piece of paper. I know I brought it along. It could be, oh, here it is. We could have our spreadsheet to the auditor. We could have our checkbook given to the auditor. We could have bank statements given to the auditor. We aren't always having material things that we're getting, you know, when we schedule a program or for the children in the summertime. It's not always the stuff like a bunch of books. Sometimes it might be. I'm gonna really need to talk to my treasurer from Friends of the Library about this and talk to her about the checklist, and I do have a copy of the checklist, and talk to my board. We're meeting on November 11th, and talk to them about this. This is not exactly what we understood
Could I?
things could be. Yes, Debbie?
Okay, I have a question. I'm Debbie Kinnickney, and I'm with the Friends of the Library also. And I just am trying to clarify some of how this would work. So are you suggesting, so every year we have a budget that we approve that designates the funding that we're giving to each specific program. So our funding is going to the children's program, and then to the adult/teen/ intergenerational programming. And then we have a couple of items that we support in the library. Right now we support the hoopla. Can you think of what else, Ben?
Which is really books.
Pardon me?
It's really books. It's electronic books.
Yeah, and I'm just trying,
Electronic books.
and the hoopla, I'm not sure where it is in our budget, but anyway, it still would probably go under adult or kids. So those are really the two things. So are you saying that we would take that amount that we have budgeted to those programs and give it in a, like a blanket donation, which it probably wouldn't be a blanket, it would still, we fundraise throughout the time period, so it would have to be, at different times of the year when we have the money come in. But basically that we would give that money and it would go into the libraries, like a special area of the library's budget within the city. Does that make sense at all, what I'm asking?
Good question too.
So right now, we pay as things come up. And so, I'm just asking, are we paying ahead and then having it just pulled out of there? Does that sound right? Make sense?
So there's some things that we could do, if there's concern about where that number is gonna be shown, in an ideal situation, it's gonna be in a separate donation account or in a donation account. There might be other donations in there, but if there's concerns, we could create a separate donation account. And then the expenditures, we can look at that and what that looks like on the city's general ledger. I would say kind of once we narrow down what the end result is. Right now, I know that you said that the checklist says it should be a component unit. Without going through that in depth, I don't want to say yes or no right now. But what I would say is you can separate the GL accounts, like to have a project code of these are what the Friends expense, or what the Friends are paying for, so quote unquote grant expenditures or donation expenditures. And there's ways to identify that or segregate. But that's getting a little bit into the weeds, but that is something that we can look to do should that be the end result once we get to that point. Does that answer your question?
I think it does, and it just sounds like you're understanding what I'm saying, and that when we've designated these funds, we want them to go to that, and we want to have total control of where our funds go.
Yes. So what you would do is you would basically be giving a restricted donation of this should be used for this specific purpose, for this you're not just giving it to the library for the purpose of the library. You're giving it to the library for a purpose of a program, which is earmarked then for a purpose. So there's different ways, and we show those restricted donations on the financial statements. We ask, sometimes that gets a little bit messy because clients maybe aren't the best about tracking that, but that's something that if the library is going to be receiving more of, that we want to sit down and talk about what the best way is to keep that segregated, whether it's through a spreadsheet, whether it's through the general ledger, if we're able to do it the correct way, etc. There's different avenues to get to that point.
So this may be getting a little more to in the nitty-gritty, but how does that work? Because like right now, each staff person who is responsible for the program that there is or the purchase that's being made, they're taking care of that purchase. So how would they do it and get it paid for? If we don't have that money, if it's in the designated account in the
So
city
that-
library fund, that's what I'm thinking, it's something like.
That's a little bit more into the details than I think I wanna go right now, but there's ways that we would have to determine who's coding invoices and what's the timing of when your donation is coming in and when the expenditure is going out. So the expense might be paid up by the city before your donation comes in, and then they would provide the support back to you. There's different things that we can talk through with that. I would say, once we get to the conclusion on the potential component unit, we sit down and talk about what that looks like from the general ledger perspective, and what information then you would want to see for documentation or support for that donation. And maybe it's a reimbursement basis versus an advance of a donation type of thing. That can all be discussed at that point,
Okay.
So
if that
Amber,
makes sense. I don't want to not answer your question, but that's
No,
a little bit
I,
more involved than what I think I can say right now.
okay, I kind of suspected that, but that's helpful, thank you.
Amber, what would be the next steps in this process?
The next steps would be for the Friends and for the association to complete that checklist based off of what they believe and what they know. If they can send that back to us, or Mary, if you wanna funnel that through yourself, complete that and send that back with, again, any documentation that would be that would support it from especially an organizational structure standpoint, meaning, are you a separate 501? Do you have bylaws, articles of incorporation, all of those? What's your board look like? What involvement does the library board have in that board determination? Does the city have any involvement? Those types of questions are all in that checklist, that if you have any of that readily available, provide that. When I get that checklist, I'll review it, I'll review the documentation, I will circle back then with any questions that I have or clarifications that I would have.
Okay,
Once
just,
we then make a conclusion, we would wanna find we would wanna sit down with administration to determine how do we seamlessly do this and what makes sense.
okay. The other question that I have, this is Debbie again, so with supporting documentation, the form that we will just review again and make sure that we have that copy to determine how our status, and then a copy of our bylaws, and would that be something you would want included with that?
Are those,
Yes.
are they listed on there?
Yes.
On that, the question, on the?
No.
It's
I
not?
don't, no, I don't believe bylaws are listed.
No,
does-
bylaws probably are not, they probably aren't, that's just something we use to support the
Yeah.
establishment of the organization and
Yeah.
the structure.
Yeah.
But yes, that'd be helpful.
Okay, and also, just so it's clear that we are totally separate from the Library Association. So whatever they do
Correct.
has nothing to do with what we're
Yeah.
doing.
Correct, yep.
How long have the Friends been an extant force around here? How long have they been serving in the community?
That is one of those things that we probably would have to go through word of mouth. I don't know when our bylaws.
More
don't-
than 40 years?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
Before the library was here?
No, no.
Yeah, there's probably been a number of years, and like I said, we have this situation at a number of clients where, and there's been some new GASB standards within the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years that have come out that have put a bigger reliance on reviewing these types of structures, relationships, and especially when you start getting into big building projects. That's really kind of, or renovations or donations, that's really the trigger of, okay, we gotta start to look at this because it could be material to the financial statements. Whereas You know, maybe in the past, it's not necessarily a material event to the financial statements, but some of those standard changes, and I think I said this to Mary, Ripon is not alone in this. There's a lot of municipalities that, from a police, fire, library, all different types of organizations that has started to have, the Gatsby world has started to focus more on that again with some new standards. So it's become a renewed focus.
Okay, anything else? Jan?
So this is back to the first thing, not the Friends, that she talked about all the money going through the city before it goes to the foundation. What do we do if they send the money to the foundation?
Then through that month,
So,
go ahead.
yeah, through the monthly statements, that activity gets captured on the city's books.
So it's just recorded, so it wouldn't be any different than if it was a check written to the library or a check written to the foundation.
So if a check gets
Correct.
written, we had that activity in September. Somebody writes a check, makes a donation and writes the check to the Ripon Public Library. That check gets deposited into our account at the city.
Right, I get
Then
that
the
part,
city
yeah.
cuts a check to the foundation to move it.
But then if it's written to the foundation,
It'll go directly in and we'll see it in the activity for the month.
that's all they need.
And then
That's
that'll get
cool with
booked.
auditors, okay.
Yes, yeah. And to do that monthly as opposed to once a year or only the
Yeah.
auditor doing it, yeah.
Just for reference, the Friends of the Library were established in 1963,
Oh,
and the Ripon Library Association was in 1884.
There you
whoa.
go. That's the
1984, wow. Okay.
Thanks, man.
Okay. Is there anything else for Amber?
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
Bye, Amber.
History.
Do you have anything else for us?
Once we circle back, I'll reach out and we'll thank
Okay.
you for your time, and if there's other questions, let me know.
Okay,
No, that's it.
okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll move on to our next visitor, Adam Conte. Come on, front.
I can wheel.
Just come on up here from the front. Or over here. Okay. Update on the grant and the project, yeah.
All right, everybody, thanks for having me. I'm Adam Sontag, I'm the city administrator. I haven't been to one of your meetings before, but I'm here tonight to talk about the flexible facilities grant that was awarded about a month ago. So, as you are all sort of aware, the city, a few months back, met with a few people from the city and Desiree reviewed the property, looked at the conditions of it, and found that there were some larger concerns with maintenance of the property, and kind of created a list and sent that to you all. That sort of triggered an effort to do a facilities master plan, and it also triggered a overall look at the project that was being fundraised for, and trying to find funding and leverage dollars in that project into a larger project.
Okay.
So, through working with Desiree and MSA, we connected some dots and connected the right people to the right resource.
MSA, I
Is
understand.
Mid-States and Associates. They're generally, they're a consulting firm, but they work mostly in local government and do, architecture, engineering,
Sure.
and then other kind of consulting, the funding, right? So the city uses them to do everything from water to roads to buildings to different things, right? So engaging them, there are two grants that were applied to, they're sort of similar. One, the library was not awarded funding. Thankfully, the Boys and Girls Club in town was, so they got $551,000. The other one was the flexible facilities, and that was awarded. So through my office and MSA and Desiree putting together the application, submitting it, the city was the applicant. So the city was the applicant and the awardee. And we now have a $1.985 million grant to essentially complete a project at the library, okay? Ultimately, the city council and the city is the awardee. So we are responsible for the management of the grant and the administration of the project. That will happen, you know, this will kind of have to kick into high gear because the city has accepted the grant. The Common Council did do that last month. So now my office has been preparing all of the paperwork to satisfy the Department of Administration's requirements for the grant. So as we look at this, the project needs to move rather quickly because we need to have construction commenced by July 1st of 2025, and it needs to be done by September 30th of 2026,
It's really fast.
Yes, it is.
okay?
Oof,
Must begin by
July
July of
1st.
next year, okay?
2024.
So kicking it into kind of high gear,
8 months.
what has happened is from that letter and the review of the facility, there was the discussion of the facilities master plan. There was creation of a building review committee that then met, so that included myself, Ben, Mary, Janet, and then Alan Danoff, our public works director. So we met and we reviewed proposals for the facility master plan. Ultimately, there's no time to do a facility master plan, right? We go from literally having a concept or a design of a goal of a project, right? To now having to do a project, but the project is about double the size of the original anticipated project, right? So while we met, we looked at the proposals, and the recommendation was to work with a company called PRA, Plunkett
Bracage.
Architects. PRA has a connection back to MSA, who helped us get the funding, right? So MSA will do a lot of the technical engineering as part of the contract. So PRA was selected, right, to be the general designer of the project. The tie back to MSA is important because of the funding component of this and understanding what the project was intended in the grant funding and tying everything back to the administration of it. It's just more of a seamless project to manage than to have multiple kind of different firms or different people working on it, because it does become more complex with the grant funding. So really, you know, at the end of the day, the goal is now to leverage those grant dollars with donated funds to complete a much bigger project at the library. And using the previous plans as the basis of what gets done, but it may be revisioned a little bit based on additional feedback, based on the dollars that are now available, and based on, you know, the overall design, you know, preferences, so on and so forth. So, but it will change in a little bit that it is a city-led project, right? The Common Council will be having to approve and be involved in a manner now that the grant is essentially coming to the city from the state, and we are required to manage that appropriately. So there are things that have to be done regarding that. So the city council will have to award contracts, bids, design, all of those things, right? That will all have to happen. So, there will be, additional soft costs with design coming up here, so PRA will have a estimate of what it costs. There'll be grant administrative costs, all of that. So, and the council will sign off on final plans as well as final, bid authorization, or who awards, who gets the bid, right, through competitive bidding. PRA was obviously selected. They are, they have indicated they are capable to meet the timeline. They will begin, meeting with city staff on Friday to be looking at previous plans and get into the building and do a walkthrough and discuss with staff kind of what the previous plans were, what things may have been missed there in the original plans, and then looking at the conditions of everything to address some of the things that weren't originally going to be addressed in the project, including more of your HVAC, electrical, all of the kind of those core things of the building. From there, what we kind of really need to understand is the process and the budget, right? So there are dollars that come in from the state, right? And then there are the grant dollars, and then there's fundraised dollars from the library that come into it to get a bigger project done. So that is a point of what is the total project looking like? What is the total spend? And I can only make assumptions based on what's been communicated to me and in financial reports of the library to see what that contribution is to the project. But I think we need to have that conversation so we can communicate to PRA, this is what we're working with, so we're not sitting here over designing it or getting ourselves in trouble financially with this project. It already is going to be a challenge to get this all done in a short period of time. And we need to be efficient, and we need to stay on track because we've signed an agreement with the state saying we will do this by this date. So there will be, the 1.985 million that was applied for, there's no match required, right? So it can all go to a project. But generally speaking, the easiest way to use those dollars is all in construction, right? So I would anticipate, based on everything going on, if you're looking at a $2 million project, right? If the library board were to say, let's make it a $2.5 million project, the reality is that $500,000, there's gonna be soft costs in there to leverage against the grant, because at a $2.5 million project, or a $2 million project, I should say, you're probably looking at $200,000 on engineering, architecture, all of that, just to get to plans, right? You're also then looking at, what does it cost to furnish it appropriately? You're probably looking at another $200,000 in new furnishings and new fixtures, and on and on and on. The grant also requires certain things for telehealth and technology upgrades. So there's things that have to be baked in to the overall project cost. But ultimately, it becomes one pot of money and will be managed within the entire scope of the grant. And so that's kind of where we're at. I would recommend that there is some contingency put aside in the project, just because the fact that, we are in the next 3 to 4 months having to get this designed out, to get it bid by March at the latest, to then have an award by April, and then start by July.
What's the last contingency are you talking about, 400,000?
I don't think there needs to be a $400,000 contingency. You know, I think there's, I just don't know how much the library board has.
We have $721,000 for the renovation fund.
So, you know, if that's the case, what I would consider,
We just got $150,000 gift.
That we don't know about yet.
No, it's
Okay.
in here. It's
I
showing,
saw a substantial gift, but I saw
it's,
nothing else.
it's showing on the statement,
Mhm.
yeah.
so
So we're at 720, almost 722.
what I would begin thinking about is, you know, how much were you thinking of doing to begin with? Because a lot of the project that was discussed previously is in the grant application in terms of, but that may just change a little bit, right? Depending on the design. When you're looking at a project of this magnitude, you know, if you have 5% as a contingency, you're probably doing okay. I will also say that, and you know, this is something that when the new director starts or just start thinking about is, what is your plan for operations during the construction period? And does that mean relocation, and is there a cost to that? Because that is a legit concern at this point,
Yeah.
which, you know, you could be looking at having to rent a place. What does that cost? You'd be looking at moving things. So these are what need to begin being thought about today. Certainly, we can try to instruct a contractor or a designer to say, we don't want to cease operations. At the same time, too, if you're digging into the entire building, and you're doing mechanicals, and you're doing HVAC, and you're doing flooring, and you're going to be moving everything.
Yeah.
You know, so this isn't just a project that's necessarily one side of a building on a quarter of the building. We're talking, you know, there could be things in here that are improved, and systems throughout the basement, and bathrooms upgraded throughout the entire facility. So, it's a big lift, but I don't wanna sugarcoat it for anybody, and I know that without a director, it's kinda like, okay, how do we begin? But I think we need to really think about this, and what's the best option, for the duration of the project, because if you start July 1st, theoretically, you could be 6 to 9 months of construction, and, depending on the magnitude of it all. So, that's, you know, that's where we're at, right? So, you know, we will, I think, from the perspective of, you know, we just went through a much larger project as a city designing out a DPW facility. We had a kind of internal staff review and committee that met and went on fact-finding and collected information to then provide design input. And then along the way, reports were given back. So I think that's probably the best solution today for everything, is to have, you know, the city and library staff take the lead on the project, using the previous project as the basis, the grant application as the basis, and we've already provided PRA feedback from the strategic plan, so there's public input. Certainly, we would love to have more time to look through everything more intently, but I think there's enough there, and there's a good understanding of where this needs to go, that through the kind of review committee with PRA and MSA, we can form a plan that, you know, is responsible and gets as much as we can get done within the building, and sort of honors the previous donations that were done, and makes a vast improvement to the facility from where we are today. So that's kind of where we're at, I think. And we'll report back with PRA and others along the way, how things are going.
It'll probably be 60 to 90 days before you think the plan, or you think there'll be a concept before the end of the year?
I think the goal is to, because of the nature of the previous, donations, we wanna be very transparent with the public about what the project is and try to give a visual as soon as possible to
Okay.
where this goes.
Okay.
But there were a lot of things that were not in the original concept or design that are now, that were in the grant application. So, it's a little, challenging, not that people care that, okay, the HVAC's getting upgraded.
But the city will be saying this needs to be done now, this needs to be done now. You'll be appointing the funds at appropriate times, giving the funds.
Yeah, well, the $2 million
From the grant.
is coming from the
Right.
state, right, through the
Right.
city, right? So those funds and how we applied for the grant were to address, the inside of this building more comprehensively than the initial project.
Right. How will funds from the library association be combined? Will staff have say over that, or will you?
Well, that'll be the board to disperse
You're
that.
talking about the money we have,
Yeah,
Right.
the 722,000?
Yes,
Yeah, we'll have to decide how much of that we wanna put on the table for the project, so that when, so it'll, I think one of the ways to think about this is a joint venture
Yeah.
between the city and the library. The money came from the federal government to the state, down to the city, for the benefit of a library project.
Right.
So, but the city is responsible for the $2 million and accounting for the $2 million. And to satisfy what it was asked to be used for. So, that's, you gotta have that overarching. Then we have our money, which is, people have donated for a renovation project. So that's in a broad
It would be,
sense.
it would be no different than any other way we operate. It would be no different. It would be, we would write the check for the cost, right? And then we'd be reimbursed that amount up to whatever is allocated. It's not that,
do you need a commitment from us how much we will contribute out of our
Yes.
720?
I think from this point forward, we need to be able to communicate to PRA, what is the budget? Like, what is there's no match required, right? And if there's no match required, we can just do a $2 million project and we can be done. I think that's not very smart, right? Because we can leverage all these funds together.
Right.
So we need to know what the budget is on the old, so we
All in.
need, yeah, all in.
without us seeing anything though. I mean, you're not asking for it tonight, right?
No, but we have to be willing, because think of it this way, originally, the library was gonna do it was gonna do a project without those funds.
Right,
So now you have the benefit of those $2 million rounded up, plus the money that we have to say, okay, what's possible, and what's the limit as to what we're willing to spend? How much do we need to put in a contingency? How much maybe would we wanna set aside in the event that, because this is such a short runway, we might say, we wanna set aside $150,000 because there's gonna be some things that just we won't be able to get done in that 15 months perhaps.
Right.
So we have to sit, not today, but the purpose of having Adam here was so that we all understand the nature of what the ongoing relationship's going to look
Yeah.
like and how it's gonna roll, because the city has the expertise to run and manage a project like this. This board of directors doesn't have that ability to do that. And we are in partnership with the city, we are part of the city. And so this is this opportunity for us to work together, and I like to use that joint venture concept. That's what we're doing. We're joint venturing for the benefit of the community to do this project.
I think for PSA, they need to understand what the full budget is before they get too far into their plans, right?
Exactly.
So how,
PRA?
at what point,
Yeah,
PRA,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
at what point are we going to decide as a board how much of that
Soon.
700? Okay.
Soon,
Well, I think, go ahead, Doug.
Yes.
So, when are we looking about, what's our contribution gonna be out of that renovation fund?
when?
When are we gonna decide? Tonight, next meeting, when?
Not tonight, I would say the next meeting.
Okay.
Yes,
So
Janet?
to me, the elephant in the room is the expectation was something would be done with the outside. And I feel before I would be willing to commit the whole 760,000 or whatever it is we wanna do, I would like to see if any of that is included, or do we need to hold some of that for doing that outdoor work another time? That's my,
The exterior application including self-reading garden closet, entryway, story time stage, steps to water, stone seat wall and picnic lawn, and a bike rack totaling $502,000
it was
in the
too
application.
much, yeah.
The entryway and the self-reading garden and a couple of those things were the majority of that. There's $150,000 in the budget to do something out back. That's what was in the budget
Early
Of the-
first,
of
yeah.
of the grant
Right.
application.
150
Right,
for
one
back
fifty
here.
for back there. The bigger focus was on the entryway and how it looks in creating a plaza and a more inviting experience up there to update as you enter, as well as leveraging more funds to redo the entire entry checkout area, so it's more inviting. Carpet throughout, paint throughout, make a cohesive entire library. So, I think PRA will use this as the guide. Obviously, there was a grand plan done back there, but ultimately, the majority of the dollars that were applied for the grant were interior focused. And while that's, I understand they may be wanting to do more out there, there's nothing for the parking lot, there's accessibility things.
I asked about that.
So those are things you can certainly think about, but ultimately, you have raised money, and there is a project getting done, regardless of if you contribute to anything. We will do a project here, okay? That, it needs to happen, right? So, do you want to partner and do more? And go through this process and let it play out, and we will report back how it gets designed out, trusting that we've taken the feedback from the public and all of the work that has been done. Because that's what our intention is, that is how we've applied to this grant. We have a meeting on Friday. I can only communicate what I know to PRA, and some of that will be assumption. And trusting that there will be a contribution coming from this board to enhance more and do more. We also don't know if the estimate in the grant that was applied, if we're even remotely close to what this is gonna cost, right?
Right.
And the moment we walk through and we start saying, we wanna do this, or we wanna do this, that things can add up very quickly, but it doesn't make sense, in my mind, to, I've never been one, if it needs to get done, let's get it done, right? Fix it now, because it's not gonna get any cheaper, so.
Right.
Yes, Doug?
This is my thought right here. We have the $722,000. Adam, would you want us to keep a contingency fund out of that for the whole project, or just
You
our?
said 5% before.
So that's about $120,000. I personally feel very comfortable about going forward with at least $500,000 of that $722,000. I do believe even with a contingency fund of like $120,000, the rest of it would end up getting used up for stuff that we don't see coming, for cost and everything. So personally, I feel very comfortable. We have this money, it's expected to be used, I would use it in some fashion for this project. So, I don't know what part the city would want us to use this for, now, or one of the things that I was slightly concerned with, the AC units need to be replaced, but they're changing those standards, and we suggested that we wait a year. That would maybe put us outside that time limit, for when that grant has to be used up. So, to me, maybe using 100,000 of that for AC units after the grant period is over might be a good idea, I don't know. But I'm just thinking about, we'll figure that out, but to me, am very comfortable, although I know it's not an action item tonight, it should be.
Can be, I don't know.
Could be.
Well,
You have to have that on the agenda if you're gonna vote on it.
I-
It's
So,
discussion.
the reality of it is, I mean, you're not going to know for months what the
Right.
total project is.
Right,
It's going to take months. And the amount of work that's going to go into planning this out now and doing a project, because what we literally have right now are renderings
right,
that are not biddable or usable for anything.
The prior information.
Right.
The stuff that was done by Enberg and all of that, there's nothing there that can be used to go to take that to a contractor and say bid this.
Uh-huh.
So we're starting from a blank piece of paper.
we're using some of the renderings to get an idea of what we would
Well,
like, but it's not,
It's a concept,
it's just a
not,
concept. It
but
just
in
needs
order to
things-
get to the,
Right, someone's actually gotta do all the design work, and that hasn't been done. To me, I'm just saying, I'm very comfortable, so, we can decide that next
It
meeting.
doesn't, if I can get just an idea of, like, if the goal is 2.5 million, right? If that's the project, overall at 2.5, if that's the general consensus, I will trust that that money will be there, and, because it's there, right? And that money was gonna get spent
Anyway,
one way or the other on
Yep.
something.
yep,
And now it's not getting spent on literally taking care of 15% of the building, right? It's the building and other things. So,
I wouldn't feel good about not committing to the majority of that going to this project. I just wouldn't, I don't feel like it's right to let Adam walk out and think, well, is the board
Who
gonna be
knows?
on this, or, yes. And I don't know, I feel like that's doing a disservice to not only the board and the city, but also to our patrons.
so just
okay,
do the whole amount.
okay, hold on.
Sorry,
It's just,
sorry, Larry.
Travis,
I agree, 100%. I mean, we raised it for this, and now we can contribute it to a bigger project. And it makes sense. I realize it's a short time frame, and we're rushing along, but it's not by our choice or Adam's choice. It's just how this grant works and how everything works. But we raised, this money was donated and raised for this
the
construction.
intention, the intention.
Much like Adam said, rather than, 15% of the building being done, now it can contribute towards a bigger part of the building being done. I mean, that's why we have this.
Brack,
Sounds like you need in your head a number like 2.4 million, 2.5 million, so that you can
we're
proceed.
ahead.
I think it's being fair to PRA as we start this, process and knowing what they can expect, right? Because we don't wanna bid out a project and spend money on designing something that's $2.8 million if it's only gonna be 2.5.
Or
Would
you
be-
start right back over again,
Right.
designing, cut this,
Or you-
cut
And
this,
you never,
this, yeah.
and it'll be hard to make the timeline.
And what was
Also-
Lisa Weeks' comment? Did you have a reservation about?
No,
No, not at all.
She
In
said
fact,
a reservation of not
Of
spending.
not,
Yes.
exactly, yes.
Good to
Janet?
meet you, Dan.
Well, I don't know enough. I could not commit tonight. Like, did you read me something that said there was 150,000 committed to the
Yeah.
outside? Is that what you read? Because I've never heard that amount before.
There's a budget put together in the application that had a list of things put into it, right? To get to the overall budget cost.
But if that would be eliminated because we have to have 2.5 million on the inside, I could not vote to give all that money of our people who donated, who expected to have it spent on the
But
outside.
if they didn't earmark it, they can expect all they want, it's not a specific use.
It wasn't a
And
restricted.
it wasn't
It wasn't, if it
restricted.
wasn't a restricted.
It was fundraised on the presumption that there was gonna be something done outside.
Well, and that isn't to say that we
But
wouldn't
it-
do anything outside.
$150,000 is not nothing.
Well, it isn't, but it might turn out to be nothing if the inside costs the whole 2.5 million.
But then, but
Is that a
that's,
true
we still
statement?
have
I
150.
don't think there's an intention to not do something on the
I know it's not an
outside, right?
intention, but
Yeah.
it could happen.
Yeah, I don't think that will happen, because we'll direct the designer
Yeah,
of the
you're gonna
project
tell
to
the
do this,
designer.
this is what we want done. It may not look or feel like what was
Well, I don't
promised
expect it
everybody,
to.
you
I
know?
don't, what I expect
Yeah.
is it to not look like it looks like right now.
Well,
yeah.
that's part of the
And-
grant,
Yeah,
is
it's
the
not
outside,
going
it's
to.
just not the back that's part of it. But the outside is being, the
Right, no, I'm
exterior is
talking
being-
about the back. I need, in my opinion, we need to address how the back
Well,
looks.
and I think we can address it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to that we have to carve out an unlimited amount in that budget of what we have to address that. And we could maybe find other ways to either raise money or
Correct.
coordinate with, you know, the horticultural society
the
here.
DNR.
Or the
you know,
DNR,
there's many-
something where we
there's-
could coordinate.
There's many other options to do that. I think, yeah, Al, we need to weigh in with Al. Al,
Yes,
what's your thought about this whole topic with the money?
the money was raised for this project. Consequently, that money needs to be chipped into the project. If there's, if there was presumptions or promises made or whatever, first of all, they should have never happened unless it was a restricted gift. But the money needs to be contributed. If a portion of it is used for contingency, usually 10% is a contingency figure. That way you're looking at 250,000. So the money's got to be contributed towards the project. We also are in the giving season now, so there may be additional contributions coming for the project, but I think we need to give Adam and the team at the city, if it's 721 or 700,000, that's gotta move forward for the project.
Okay, thank you. I'm in agreement
Excuse me.
that the money, I will, Jerry, that the money is for the purpose of the renovation. And that we're in partnership with the city on this project, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the city of Ripon to do this project. And a contingency is certainly always a good idea in a construction project. And so I think we need to be able, maybe we're not gonna vote on it tonight, but I think we should be able to indicate to Adam a dollar amount that we're willing to recommend. Yes,
Friends,
Jerry,
Yes, I'm speaking as a person that was on the renovation committee. I was on the planning committee, I've been working on this for a long time. I do know, one particular, donation that was made, and it was, I don't say it was restricted to, however, in the meetings that we had, there was I believe, $100,000 donation to the outside area.
was that
To the
from-
outside, the back, or just the outside?
No, I mean,
Exterior.
the climbing wall, the theater, the hoo-hoo, all that stuff, okay? That was, I was at a meeting when that was done. However, I'm not saying it was restricted, I'm sure the person who did that could probably, at some point in time, was probably willing to move that money to wherever it needed to be, because our committee sort of stopped last August. But I do know that, because I was at a meeting.
Well, we all want that to be done, right, at least 150,000 for that outside.
But that is part of the grant
Yeah,
already,
there's,
so that will be done.
Yeah,
That
that's
will
what I'm
be
saying.
Okay.
So out of the total project, if it is 2.5 million, then you're talking about, fairly $150,000 towards the outside is a reasonable amount of money. To start with,
That's a lot of landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, there were specific like donations that were made with naming rights attached to them at the time of the initial fundraising campaign. So those would just be, I don't have a list of those handy right now, but for example, the 100 Extraordinary Women, that money was designated towards the HOA. Now, I mean, a lot of the stuff is already planned to be done in the grant, or in the project anyway, so whether, you know, it's already part of that fund to be used for that, so it's not a question of whether or not that's going to get done. It's just kind of keep those things in mind. I think that was the only really big donation that was like that, aside from.
There was a donation by Friends of the Library of $25,000. And I believe, I don't have it with me, but I believe we are going to be on something in the, on some big bulletin board area, in the entry part. Because, yeah, there were some naming rights. But I'm not saying that the Friends of the Library couldn't change their mind on there or something like that. But I do think 100 Extraordinary Women, which I was part of, and we had more than 100 Extraordinary Women in that, that they definitely very much want to be in that entryway with all their needs.
in the entryway.
Yeah.
So clearly, there's some homework that needs to be done relative to the money that was donated
Yes.
and the specificity of that, and that's something that we'll have to dig in to find out that information.
So Mary, we probably have to meet for too long so we can give Adam.
Well, what's your timing? When would you like the number? Do you
So
set
how
a
much,
deadline?
you have $721,000 in the building fund account, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you round ours up $15,000, it's $2 million in terms of the grant. You know, at pledging all of that, at $500 and a $250,000 project, that gets you the 10% contingency.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you don't need the contingency, then you have 250,000 or 220,000 or 200,000 that goes back into the fund balance
To be
to
used for,
support other projects or other initiatives in the future,
Or to finish stuff up.
or to finish stuff up. I think
Okay.
that is reasonable,
Okay.
and I can run with that.
Okay,
okay,
thank you, Adam.
thanks,
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
okay.
You have a good night, Adam, thank you.
Go watch election coverage and wait for somebody to win.
Okay. Maybe this is the time to talk about another meeting, because we're gonna need to vote on that decision, since apparently we can't vote on that tonight.
When do you wanna do that, Mary?
I mean, we can, I believe we could do that. We wouldn't have to, I don't think we necessarily even have to meet in person.
You can wait till December.
Can wait till December? Okay. Okay, then we won't talk about that quite yet. Okay,
So we will not be meeting on the 26th, correct?
pardon me?
We will not be meeting on the 26th, correct?
26th of,
Which would have been our normal meeting night.
26th of November?
Right. I
So-
really
so-
hope we don't, because I'm serving 250 Thanksgiving dinners that night, and I really don't want to be here.
Yeah, my thought was, since we're talking about schedules, well, number one, Alex is gonna start on December 4th.
Okay.
That's wonderful.
Okay.
Does she have a place like that?
Yes, she found a place to live. I don't know where, but she got a place and told Adam and I on Monday that she would be starting on the 4th. So notwithstanding the need for a special meeting, maybe if we need to finish this bit of business in another meeting, our regularly scheduled meeting would have been the 26th of November, which is Thanksgiving week. I was gonna suggest that that not happen that day. I would like to suggest that we meet on December the 10th, which would be the Tuesday following the week that she starts to work.
What time?
That's a Tuesday.
What time?
5 o'clock?
I don't know,
I
what,
have a 7 o'clock council meeting.
on December the tenth? We could be done before your meeting.
Okay, I don't have a problem with doing it then. I'm just.
Just, because then I thought that she would have a chance.
Right.
We could get right on the ground floor with being able to meet with her as a board so that we can get things going for her and obviously the project. She's gonna be the representative from the library working with the city on the project. She'll attend all those meetings. She'll be the person that reports back to us, things that we have to decide on, if there's things we have to vote on. You know, those will come via the communication from her attending those meetings. So that was my thought, was to have a meeting on
Are you
December
dropping
10th.
off?
What?
Are you gonna drop off and not go?
Drop off what?
Those meetings, I mean, not the.
No, because we're not gonna have that committee anymore. That's not
I
gonna
thought
be
we
our,
were.
that's not gonna be our committee.
Well, it's not our committee, it's theirs, but we were to be invited. One board member was gonna be on there at least. You don't think so?
Well, that was when we had it as a library board committee. I think that if you want to attend the meetings, you can. But
I
it's
just
not,
think-
it's gonna be a city administratively driven.
Right, but wouldn't you want communication going back and forth and someone just aware of what's
Yeah.
happening? It
Yes,
just seems like.
but it's not gonna be.
Besides the
That's
director?
what I'm saying, you don't want it to be you.
No, it's
That's
not,
fine.
no, I'm not, no, that's not what I'm saying, Janet. I'm
I'm
saying is
joking.
that it's not our committee.
Right, no,
It's
I
not
know
gonna
that.
be the board committee.
I know that.
They're gonna have their meetings, but the primary person who needs to be involved with all those meetings is Alex, as the
Right.
staff representative. And if we want to attend as board members those meetings,
And you feel that you can apprise her of what's been going on to the level where she'll know what she's supposed to?
Well, we don't even know much what we're.
Right,
Yeah.
how does Mary know any more than anyone, right? Yeah, it's,
Right.
No, Alex, I'm talking
yeah. But I
well,
know.
that's part of the purpose that I wanted to have that meeting right after she started working. If
Right,
that
that-
worked
that
for
makes
people
sense.
to meet on the tenth,
about. I'm free
It's-
on the 10th.
it's early enough in the month, it doesn't conflict with the holidays, it's like sandwiched between Christmas and Thanksgiving. And then the last two Tuesdays in December are both holidays, 24th and the 31st. So my thought was to go into early January for the next meeting. We don't have to decide that today, but I think December 10, if that works for people, that would be our next meeting.
that work
And it
for
sounds
everybody?
like that would work for Adam to have the decision by then.
I think that would be fine.
Okay,
Is there any way that we can talk about the standing meeting at 5? And it's a completely different board, and that night never works for me, the fourth Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I
Yeah,
can't
I
move
don't-
the thing I have, so I was just wondering if at some point we could just say,
let's put that on the agenda
yeah,
for the
thank
December
you, to
meeting.
discuss when the board, because
Okay.
now it's Alex will, be involved, when can she come, and, yeah,
Would the 3rd Tuesday be better?
well, anything but the 4th.
Okay,
which-
so,
Yeah,
so we'll put that on the schedule for the December 10th
thank
meeting.
you.
Okay,
Because I think it's all new people and Alex will be new, and I think Desiree really liked that time for some reason, so I didn't want to make a big thing about it, but now
Okay.
that we're all fresh here.
okay. So just to get through some business, we've got 2 sets of minutes that we need to approve.
Okay.
One is from our meeting when we did our hiring. Duly noted that Breck was not in attendance, so we'll strike that. Basically, we went into closed session, we interviewed the people, we came out of closed session. Well, we made our decision, we voted, we came out of that session, and we had a 5-0 vote in favor of offering the job to Alex. So that was in essence what happened. Can I get a motion to accept that?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Great, okay. The second one is just informational, but because it was a library committee, Janet and I attended a meeting with Ben, Adam, and Alan to review the 9 proposals that had been given for a facilities master plan. The decision was made, as Adam explained, to hire the combined PRA, MSA, not MRA. And we agreed with that, and that's what happened in that meeting. Can I get a motion on that? To accept those minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept those minutes.
Second.
Okay.
The PRA was the first word Plunkett, did you say?
Plunkett Racich out of Milwaukee,
How do you spell racage?
Rayyisch, I believe.
Is that just a name?
Yeah, that's the name of the firm, Plunkett Racich Architects. Okay, moving on to the interim administrator, Ben's report. We're gonna talk about the monthly statistics, the Giving Tuesday, and an issue about patron art on loan.
Yeah, so just looking at the general statistics from September, our door count was about 4,300. I do have some of the statistics from October already, just with the date of this meeting. So foot traffic did go way up in October from the previous month. So we had almost 1,000, about 900 more people physically in the library in October than we did in September. So that's good to see. In-person circulation for September was 6,104. If we add in the ebook circulation, we were almost at 8,000, 7,984. We had 1,295 active patrons that month. 305 Overdrive users who checked out over 1,500 items. 105 Hoopla users who checked out over 300 items. 425 users on our wireless internet here at the library. We answered 347 reference questions, 256 directional questions at the desk, and our large meeting rooms were used 53 times.
Wow.
That has stayed pretty consistent. Just looking in October, our large meeting room use went, sorry, that's overall meeting room use was 53 per month. For October, that's up to over 90 reservations for our meeting rooms. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there, but that's good. Always good to see library usage going up. You live and die by the statistics. Then, yeah, the main issue that I'd like to bring up just in advance of the renovation, since it's now a when and not like an if or a hypothetical thing. There have been some questions brought up about some artwork in the library. One of these has been brought up in the past, and that is the mural that's behind the bookshelves down here in the elevator lobby area. That was painted,
Over here?
yeah, that was painted, let me just bring up the text from Desiree.
But you can't see it.
No,
You
you
can't
can't
really
see
see
it.
it right now, no. It's been up there for more than 20 years. It was
It's
painted
hidden.
by a high schooler.
Eagle Scout project, right?
Eagle Scout project, I believe. There was nothing put in writing or nothing officially set as far as how long that painting would stay there. We did look into painting over it at one point. We got in touch with the student no longer lives in the area. I believe Desiree made contact with the student's mother. She was very adamant that the painting could not be removed or painted over, as that was the original agreement. Like I said, we don't really have anything.
There's no written agreement or no
There's no.
document that says, okay.
Looking online, there might be an issue of copyright law applying, which we need to be looked at. Just in terms of if we're looking at the overall renovation, we want to redo that space, that space is, the lighting is terrible. It gets a lot of use with the free books being down there, but it's like hand-me-down furniture that's down there for the shelving that's on there.
Can you
It's
help
just-
me understand, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you help me
Sure.
understand the copyright issue that we're thinking of?
Because it's artwork that was created in a public building, the artwork itself is copyrighted by the original owner, or the original artist. So we physically, we legally do not own the artwork.
Did they actually copyright it, or?
And you don't have to do that. It's
No,
just,
you know-
if you create it, it's copyrighted.
Is it removable or is it on a wall?
It's painted on the wall.
Painters on the wall.
Could, we have Lud opine on that?
think.
Oh, yeah, good idea.
Let's have Lud, opine on.
Love Wertz, yeah, city attorney.
I personally don't see a problem painting over it. It is in a public building.
I think looking at the timeframe, more than 20 years. I think
Yeah.
And it's been behind the
reasonable to
bookcase probably for 10.
This Eagle Scout is now 35 or so,
Yeah.
right?
I just know it was an issue the last time we wanted to do
Well,
some minor
Desiree
renovations.
said that the mother was not happy.
Well, it's not hers, so she can't.
It's not her
She
decision.
doesn't have the
Correct,
copyright.
There you go.
correct, it's an adult now.
Can we
Yeah.
take a picture and get her a poster printed out or
There you go.
something?
That's what I was
Great
Great
thinking.
idea,
That's been
yeah, that's
mentioned
good.
today.
Take a
Yeah,
picture.
Put his name and a picture of it or something.
Yeah.
yeah.
The second major thing as far as artwork goes is the gigantic oil painting we have kind of across from the circulation desk, next to the copier room. That is not actually owned by the library. It's on sort of indefinite loan from the artist, who also no longer lives in the area. I believe he's out on the East Coast. He still does some classrooms and stuff like that. I know it's been mentioned that when the remodel takes place, it's not necessarily something anyone feels a strong need to keep in the library. Just the size, it's not, there's reading imagination in the painting, but it's not tied specifically to the library. So we would need to figure out who has the rights to that ownership.
Is that the one with the little kid?
The little girl
that's-
reading and the
yeah,
knight
yeah.
on the horse and that.
I'd like to ask Ben or someone to track the artist down, send him a letter asking him to come and do something with it. We are renovating the library, and it may not go back in the library, may be disposed of. in some
Well, if it's
fashion.
on loan, then
Then he's
it,
gotta
as
come and
opposed
get
to
it.
giving it, I think you just give him a
Give him
reasonable
notice,
amount
tell
of
him come and get
notice.
it.
And say he's got, 3 months to come and get it or something. Yeah,
Give it up to him, tell him he's gotta do something with it.
And then we appreciate the loan.
yeah.
Well, the little kid is in it. He's probably 35 too. In fact, they know who's in it. He's a local Ripon boy. He painted in the
Anything else?
Interesting.
The battleship?
And the only other thing, yeah, that's technical too, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
We've had a few concerns brought mostly by staff, and I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't been brought up by patrons yet. We have a very intricate, very impressive ship model that's been on display at the library for as long as I can remember. It's the main issue is that it's a Nazi Germany battleship.
Oh.
And so there is Nazi symbolism on it, which obviously can be seen as
Well,
unwelcoming.
Where is it?
On top of the fireplace.
Who
Oh.
owns it? The library?
The library doesn't know, as far as I know.
You know who owns it?
Yes.
Okay.
They still borrow it from time to time for competitions and that sort of
Okay.
thing.
I think you probably asked them
come
to,
and get
same
it.
thing, yeah.
Come and get it.
We're
Yep.
doing a renovation and we just don't want anything to happen to your battleship. So you should come
Take
get
it
it.
away.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's been concerns have been brought up by several staff members, and I
Sure.
said I would kind
Yeah.
of see if they had consensus.
If that floats.
Anything else, I think there would be, we should keep it over. And then the last thing I just want to mention is working on Giving Tuesday. I did look up quickly just to see what last year's Giving Tuesday donations came in at. It was a total of around $8,000, so it's not, while it's definitely helpful and worth doing, it's not something that's really going to make any sort of impact on the renovation project.
No, I don't think so either. It's a nice bump, and over time, over years, build it up, that's a different thing, but
I do think it would be a good opportunity to give the information out about the current state of the renovation overall.
I think so, a little paragraph, short, to the point. Also, does anybody do you need help stuffing envelopes, putting stamps on, anything like that?
We will.
Okay?
We send about 500.
When does it go then?
I think Giving Tuesday technically is like the Tuesday after Thanksgiving.
But you gotta get it out before us.
Yeah, we want to try to mail it out on the right of
So
this.
you're gonna need some volunteers.
Yeah, can you let us know when would be a good time, and say, yeah, I can donate an hour or something.
Okay, yeah, I believe the mailing list itself, we are pretty much set. We've got all the used donors from previous years, participation in library programs via public maybe I will records and that sort of thing. So I've been working on a letter, I'll work with Mary on that, and then hopefully within a week or so we'll have something ready to go.
Okay. As part of Ben's report, you guys, is the monthly financials. Were there any questions, or this is us, the budget as of 9 months? We seem to be on track.
The budget,
Nothing is,
nothing weird.
nothing, you know, if you look at the percentage of budget, things are within, you know, the 75% of the year kind of category. The only couple things that are over are things that are paid for, you know, more as a lump sum or early on in the year kind of thing. So if there's no questions about that, we'll go ahead and approve those.
There were a couple of invoices that came through email that were from kind of the transition period just before Desiree left, that did not get entered into the invoices before that, so there was a couple of things that, again, the reminders were like the library card. There's a couple of larger expenses in that time period.
So they're gonna be in October then?
Well, they should be on the,
Oh,
yeah,
they're in here.
I believe so. There was the $700, I think, was one of them for, we had purchased another box of the plastic library cards that we use.
Oh, okay. Okay, anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. The Oshkosh Area Community Foundation, so that,
I'm sorry.
yes,
Are we still on the board package of I,
sure,
when we get to the breakdown that Ben did by what was checked out, I'd like to talk about that, but we're
that
getting-
would be part of his report.
Okay, Ben, I want to thank you for breaking down what was checked out.
With
The circulation, I think you did a really good job of looking at this, and it seemed like there are 466 adult fiction books checked out, was one of the largest amounts, and then there was 619 juvenile picture books checked out. I mean, these are big areas, I think, that the library, with their selection of books and stuff, needs to be aware of, that they're buying things that people are going to read. Nonfiction was another big area too, juvenile DVDs. And I'm not suggesting we don't buy other of these category books too, but we need to like pay attention to what people are reading, and I think that was a good breakdown, Ben. So thanks for doing that.
One thing that I'll just mention, this is something that staff have been discussing, which will be something to discuss with Alice once she started, is the idea of interfiling some of our collections. So right now we have mysteries and science fiction and westerns and young adult books all separated out. We have some similar, divinations in the, delineations in the children's collections too. And I've seen some recommendations online, and staff have had a positive response to this, to the idea of kind of interfiling those things. So instead of having separate sections for different genres of fiction, we would go to labeling different genres of fiction. One benefit to that would be allowing us to have more types or more genres represented. In some instances, you could have one common things like Amish fiction, Christian fiction. We don't have separate collections for those. We could label books for that, so you could just look for a label on the shelf and find different things. There are a lot of authors who write multiple genres, and people come in and they're looking for a book and they can't find it. It's because they thought it was a mystery, but this one's not a mystery, it's a regular fiction, and vice versa. Also, a lot of popular fiction right now, like the bestsellers, the things that I'm putting in on orders, technically ends up in the science fiction category, which historically, once that's off of the new shelves and out there for people to see, just kind of fades into obscurity and doesn't circulate. Because it's all by itself in the back of the library and nobody just happens to browse by it. So that's something that's been
Yeah.
discussed, especially if we're going to be moving collections around.
It's a good
potentially
opportunity
closing
to,
that would be
Yeah,
nice.
change it up.
Absolutely not. I have to object to that most strenuously.
well, I don't think, but you know, I don't personally feel like that's not our decision.
Right.
I mean, he asked our opinion, I
That's,
think.
I know,
So
but
it'd be
that's not,
something
Yeah.
to consider.
Yeah.
that's really the board, the library director and her staff's decision.
But I think I would
about-
gather patron preferences before I
Sure.
did it.
Well, it'd be change, and that's always hard for people.
What's your,
That's the only thing I look for, is those. I don't wanna go look for them all mixed in. Yeah, no, absolutely not, yeah. And I think that's what you'd hear from some people, but I don't know if you'd hear it from the majority, yeah.
Anything else on that? On the circulation stuff? But you're saying, Doug, it's a nice tool. It's a good
Oh,
tool.
yeah, I like that,
Yeah.
the report, so I looked at, oh, yes, I remember asking Ben that we could do something like that at the last meeting, and he
And
came,
you did it.
he did it, and, I mean, I think it's a good tool. It's one of the tools that we should use, or not we, but the staff and directors should use about deciding kind of what books that people are reading in the community. Not that the other ones aren't worthy, but maybe they need to be, you know, we need to survey, need to make sure that they're seen. I personally like reading science fiction, but it's kind of off to the side oftentimes. So maybe some more prominent spacing, is like
Well,
at the grocery store, you know, the distributor, or
end cap.
like the end caps, because that's where all the good deals are, but that's where they make their money at, because everything is right there.
And we are working towards getting a more regularly scheduled social media presence too, with more like short videos and here's some new books that came out. It's something we've been working on for a couple of years now. It's hard to get people in front of a camera.
Yeah.
And I know Alex is very keen on getting engagement from the community, so I'm excited to have, you know, some more.
That's really one of her.
Well, I would be willing to do something, discuss what books I like, I've been reading, or what I've been listening to. If she wanted someone to do video with,
Sure.
I'm sure the rest of the board could be right there to do it also, right, Lisa?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just volunteer for?
Talk about your favorite
Yeah.
books. Okay, just in the interest of trying to get this done, and we do have to go into a very quick closed session at the very end, so I just wanna keep this rolling. Oshkosh Area Community Foundation. Part of our monthly report is always to see the activity that's gone on inside both of our accounts and foundation. So that's always part of our packet. This is, we actually, Ben pulled more detailed information, which I thought was super helpful to have, that actually shows, rather than just the lump sum of the contributions, we get to see where the contributions came from. And when you see money coming across as the city of Ripon, that's when someone writes a check directly to the library, has to get deposited in the city then cuts a check to the foundation.
Right.
So those are also, we don't unfortunately have the detail on those folks tonight. I wanted to make a special note to everyone that the Sensenbrenners made another very large donation towards the renovation fund. And if there's anyone that knows them personally and would be willing to pen a board thank you, that would be great. If
Is
no
that
one.
reflected in the 152,000 one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the second page,
Yeah.
it's censored, yes, 140, it was a stock donation.
Adam might know how to contact them.
Who?
Adam.
Yeah. Well, I've got information from the foundation, on their address, I just didn't know if anyone knew
I
them.
personally have never met.
If anyone knew them, okay, that's fine. The real issue that I wanted to talk about tonight, that, Ben and I had a meeting with the foundation just to kind of go through some, housekeeping kind of issues and just to understand, like, how much information is available there about the donations. When the donations come in, do they send out a thank you? You know, those kinds of things that we wanted to understand. And through that process, I wanted to know about how the disbursements get made. And and there's an agreement that was signed when the fund was created that stipulated that disbursements could be made with the authorization of the director or the president of the board. And there was no further conditions put around that disbursement, which I thought was, so then we had this face-to-face meeting. I asked Carleen specifically, like, how did it get communicated to you if there was money that was gonna be taken out. She said she would receive a copy of the board minutes that authorized that expenditure or transfer, and that was it.
Mhm,
And I thought that was
mhm.
highly unusual. And especially, and now granted, you had a 19-year relationship with a director that, you know, was a known person to them. But I still think in other situations as a fiduciary, that's a very loosey-goosey, your antenna's up on this
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I asked them specifically for a disbursement request form and did not receive anything, so I went to the Google machine, found some information and crafted one and wanted to discuss this to see if this felt good to you guys, if you felt like this was complete enough. And then, we come back in our next meeting, we would vote on this and if there needs to be any changes. So my idea was, it's dated, it's a dollar amount, it's the purpose, and then backup documentation. So if we were, for instance, paying a architectural bill, that would be attached to it. So there would be a file of information associated with, we would have a copy, the foundation would have a copy. Who it's being paid to, the board minutes that would have authorized that transaction to happen, because that would have to come from us to authorize money going out. Then the communication to the foundation should really have, in my view, 2 signatures. It should require the signature of the director and a board representative. That it can't just be made by the director on their own, requesting funds to be dispersed.
Okay.
So, any discussion about that?
I'm in complete agreement, so let's put that on for an action item next month, and
Any revisions?
My concern is with the board minutes.
Okay.
How do we know that I didn't just go out there?
And I asked her that. I said, how did you know that this was a legitimate board minute? She just took it on faith because it was coming from,
right,
Yeah, I don't think we should do that.
okay.
That, it makes me uncomfortable that,
Well, they're published.
they are published, but I could,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Right,
could
but
just
I
copy
mean,
that.
if we make sure she gets the published ones.
So how do I identify that that is a published item?
Well, she would have to pick it up wherever it's published from, I guess is what I'm saying. If she picks up the published ones, then
Minutes
then
are-
we're good, right?
Minutes are eventually published on the city website.
Yeah.
So we would have to say, the minutes are on the city website.
Yep, and have
Okay,
her
and
pick
she
them
would
up.
have to go
Yeah,
pick them
yeah, I
up.
mean, that would
Okay,
work, right?
that would make me feel more
Yeah.
comfortable, because
Okay.
if I'm including it with this documentation, I'm
Right.
just gonna go out there and say, oh, well, this authorizes
check
Lisa
comes to me,
Weeks
right.
instead of, you know, the city to have the
Yeah.
money.
Okay. Okay.
Mary, also a way to do this is that the board passes a resolution authorizing the dispersal of some of the funds. Then that can be voted on, it can be signed by, the board president and the director, and then, filed accordingly also.
Okay,
So you've got the minutes, you've got a board resolution that can clearly outline what the funds are for, the amount, all of those things. And then you've got, the board, the vote, ayes, nays, and all of those things. It's really clean, so.
so you're suggesting the minutes and a board resolution?
Absolutely.
So the board resolution is different than, so the minutes just recounting what happened at the meeting. The resolution is really kind of this document, if it's signed off on, I guess.
It's a resolution that outlines, what's happening, and that it's been voted, it's presented as an agenda item
Maybe the date.
by for the board board to vote on, and then it's recorded accordingly.
Okay,
The city does that
they do. Okay.
regularly,
So
so.
there's so you
Right,
could,
so if you just ask
Okay.
Lud or Adam,
okay,
we do resolutions
Okay.
like
okay,
probably monthly. We
Okay, I'll
have
ask
a
Adam.
resolution for
Okay.
something, to borrow
Perfect.
money, to whatever.
They celebrate Pumpkin Day.
No,
Okay.
well, that's a different thing, but yeah, something like that.
okay.
Is
All
this
right.
for major expenses?
Well, this is any time there's money that's gonna come out of that foundation account, cause you have to go to them and request it.
Okay.
There has to be a process for making the request that is more than just the library director sending over the minutes and them cutting a check.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it just, and our investment policy does not call for any of this. So
Right.
that also needs
We need
to
look
be
at that.
updated to reflect that,
Thanks for looking into that.
yeah. I'm just, with a brand new person, you just really kind of, you want these things to be,
Protect her.
yeah, exactly, yeah, correct, yeah. Okay, library budget, guys, we've seen this budget before. It was revised, to reflect, the salary for the new director and health insurance for the new director and, that's the primary differences that are in there. And that we're gonna have some miscellaneous revenue, which is additional donations that'll come in. It kind of ties into that conversation today about the Friends of the Library. And most likely, those dollars will come to us, and then we will be incurring those purchases, expenditures, probably. That won't be determined totally, but whenever we receive, like we got an in-kind donation from the Ripon Library Association, and they paid for our phone system. That's something that showed up in miscellaneous revenue. Or if there's a grant that is received for funding the costs of going to the convention or training, those kinds of things, that's what is in that line item. It helps to offset operating expenses.
I think it just increases transparency. If people will look at that and say, well, how in that budget are they able to do all those things? Well, it's because we got a donation from here, from here, from here, and from here, and we're tracking all those donations in a much better way than we did before.
So, the original request that we made to the city was for $452. It came back that it's gonna be $450. So that's really the major difference.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Why is our book budget down by 11,000 from the proposed? Did you see that, Ben? It was 52 and it's down to 43. For all the books and DVDs and
I
CDs.
think that's because that's the only place that we could reduce, that the budget could be reduced to make this work at that number.
So you just had a total and had fixed things that you couldn't change, and then you started looking for places.
This
Who
was.
did this? I guess that's my question.
Well, it was done by the financial office at the city. When they looked at the numbers that were gonna be available, Janet, this is the number they're saying we can get is $450. That's what we can plan on.
But they decided where to cut then?
No, they put together the information to say, here's what it's gonna look like with the new salary, the health insurance. So if you can find
So
another.
who decided to change the book budget from 52, your materials budget from 52 to 43?
That was done to make it
I know, but
balance.
who did it? Who was working on this? Because I'm on the finance committee and I wasn't aware that any of this was being worked
That's
on.
why we're talking about it tonight.
Okay, so.
Because there was no finance committee that met.
Right.
So
I guess my question is, why not? If we were going to cut things like the materials budget, did we not meet and discuss? That's my question.
We're discussing it now.
we're discussing it, because we're discussing it now. We didn't have a finance committee meeting. We have an interim administrator who we told that Ben is not responsible for making the budget. When we hired Alex, those numbers got plugged in, and when that got plugged in, along with her health insurance, we didn't have enough money.
So I see training was upped by 1,000,
Training was what?
upped by 1,000,
Increased.
yeah.
No, it was, the original ask was 17, it was up, it's 1850, so it's $150 on the detail. That,
Okay, you
So
guys are all okay with this? I mean.
but Janet, where are we gonna get the money from? Where are we gonna get that other
Well,
9,000?
I guess, I think that we should have discussed it earlier and looked. I guess I can't tonight say that I can pull something out of somewhere else. I don't know what's fixed, I don't know.
Look at the details, it's the same details that have always been there. I mean, otherwise, the other option is put it back to where it was and raise another $9,000 to cover that. Through fundraising from the Friends, some other way. But the reality is, if we're getting $450 and we get the $219 from the county, and we've gotta cover the overhead, we've got a $9,000 gap. It's not made up. So we have choices to make. We can either have less staffing to cut 9,000. We can't cut our fixed cost numbers. We could cut all the training and travel out, that's 2,000, put that back into books. That's certainly an option. We cannot buy magazines or
We
not
have
buy the newspapers or,
$3,000 landscaper?
Yeah,
What's that for?
mowing the grass,
No, that's, the city's gonna do that now, and that wasn't that line item, I don't think, was
I
it?
don't think that, I think the landscaper is everything else that the city
I
does.
thought that was put in because we thought we were gonna have some changes made. I thought we added that last
Well,
year
we
when we
could-
thought that was gonna be an annual cost on our landscaping to keep things the way they were after it was redone. I mean, that's the kind of thing, I don't know that we can hash it out right here, right now, but
well,
Well, you're voting on it when, but we can,
I don't know about the 3,000 now that Janet's mentioned it. And I don't know if the city was gonna charge us back for mowing the grass or not, how that was gonna happen. But I'd say just do the budget now, we can check in that $3,000, and we could, if a little bit more, we could amend that budget. If we have $3,000 more in there, then we could put that back in the book fund.
there's also $1,000 more for the new phone system. That's 1,000 more a year, that's plus 1,000.
Ben, has our budget been satisfactory up to this point for books and materials?
We have money we haven't spent this year.
As far as I know,
Have we had surpluses?
it's hard to tell for me because there's a lot of things that are ordered ahead of time before books actually are released. So I don't necessarily know when those invoices are going to come through. Desiree put a lot of orders in before she left as well. And then I've been just working with her guidelines and her suggestions for making additional purchases for new items, new releases, what gets,
But you think we'll be okay if we come in close to what the new figure is here?
for next year.
yeah. I mean,
I-
Doug, you were just talking about how many juvenile books circulate, and they cut it by $2,000 for child books.
Right, but I don't know where we'll get that money from at this point.
Maybe we decide we're not gonna spend Or if books are the most important thing, maybe we don't need to spend $7,000 on DVDs.
Cause I mean,
There's a
the
point.
adult books
$7,000.
the adult
That's a
books
lot
go
of
from
money.
15 to 10.
Pardon
You're
me?
cutting a
CDs.
third of the budget for adult books.
But there's also, there's child books, CDs and DVDs, adult DVDs and
Yep.
child DVDs.
This is a book
That's-
place.
That's 7, 8, 8.5.
It is, but the circulation numbers, if you look at the
Mhm.
report, DVDs are one of the highest
Mhm.
circulating things that we have yet.
I was wondering where the numbers came from. Like, who
I
said,
was not involved.
you didn't, okay, I was just wondering who said, well, adult books are gonna be cut by a third of their budget, but children's books are gonna be cut by a fifth of their budget, you know what I mean?
I mean, I just know from conversations that looking towards next year's budget, there were going to have to be some significant cuts made somewhere
Okay.
to make the, to make the budget work.
These aren't board decisions, are they?
We have to ultimately approve the budget, but if we had a director,
To speak
you know,
to
the
it.
original budget was prepared by Desiree. And in that was included all of the salary increases that had to do with the STEP program. So those are all factored in here. So we're honoring that STEP system for 2025. So those are all factored in, plus 3% cost of living for everyone. And now we've built in the cost of the new director
Uh-huh.
and her insurance. And based on the 450 that we can expect from the city, and hopefully we still are we're gonna get 219 from the county, we're short. So what can we do?
Are you looking to make a motion to approve the budget? We can make a motion and then discuss it more and then vote on it. It's up for an action item, I think, isn't it?
It is, just because I know we're,
It's November.
right,
Well, then I'd make a motion to approve the budget as presented.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed?
Opposed?
Janet's opposed. Okay. Okay. Where's the last? Okay, meeting schedule, we already got that, December 10.
Right.
We need to go into a closed session for 5 or 6 minutes, 10 minutes maybe tops, and you'll have to leave.